Tonight's talk is going to be, this evening, is going to be about the easy yoke, or the gentle yoke. That's another way also you can find in the books. And the consoling Christ. And we will see that both topics, they are connected to each other. So let's start with the word yoke. And if you just wondering there, yoke in Portuguese is jugo. We're going to talk about the jugo leve. So the yoke is this wooden beam. And normally this wood beam that holds two animals together. So they must do the work together, okay? And that's enabled them to do the load, the working in pairs. So they are obligated to work together. That's the yoke. And it's why Jesus chose this word, because Jesus always, and his words and his teachings, he's always say something about that's the very common at the time he lived. So this was a very common thing. And also as synonyms for yoke, you can say that it's compel, confine, constrain, detain, oblige, prescribe, restrain, and restrict. So those are the meaning of the word yoke. So the easy yoke, and that's the passage we are going to talk today. And you can find in the Gospel according to Mathew on chapter 11 and verses 28 to 30th. So let's read it together. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burnt, and I will give you a rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So that's the passage we are talking about. So in general, Christian message is accepted and admired worldwide. I think we all agree on that. And few are people, especially those in the West, who do not recognize the high moral content of the gospel. However, this fact is most accepted of us and admire Jesus' teachings, but we are still far from making them subject to the yoke of Christ and putting his teachings into practice. So we read the passage, we understand the passage, but when it comes to putting in our lives daily, that's the hard part. So that's why it's necessary to understand the true meaning of the expression yoke of Christ. So in order to do that, we're going over some historical moments when Jesus brought us his message. Historic moments, the historic environment in which the gospel was born is that of Judaism, as it was formed and nourished by the sacred books of the Old Testament. So Christianity has historically appeared as a continuation and perfection of the revelation that was given by God to the people of Israel. So Palestine, the site of Jesus' preaching, was under the obedience to the Roman orders. So they were subjected to Roman Empire at that time. So let's understand the meaning of expression yoke during those times. We have here yoke. We have this expression that was used at that time. It's called ignominious yoke. It's a spear that is placed horizontally. As I don't know if you can see the photo. Is a spear that is It's put horizontally with two others nailed on the ground. And when they defeat some people, they would put the leader to go and walk under. And it was really degrading ceremony. It was accompanied by insults. They would insult, and which provoked the fury of the defeated, and it was occasion of carnage. So that's one of the context we see the word yoke. Also, yoke in Hinduism. Yoke in Hinduism can be seen in two ways, as a heavy yoke and a light yoke. What is a heavy yoke? So if the burden in our life is too heavy, so our unconscious may be revealing the excess tasks and responsibilities which hold us down. So basically, it enslaves us. When you don't have the balance between work, family, and social commitment, you have a heavy yoke. But if you are able to well balance between the efforts concerning your work, family, and social commitment, then you have a light yoke. That's how Hinduism see the word yoke. Now, the yoke as a symbology, as a symbol, it represents the oppression and embarrassment. So the passage of the vanquished under the Roman yoke is sufficiently explicit. We have many examples in history to illustrate that. So the yoke there symbolizes discipline in two ways. Either it is suffered in a humiliating way, or discipline is chosen voluntarily and leads to self-control, to inner unit, to union with God. For instance, we know that the history of yoke in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Let's see an example here. This sentence here, to carry the yoke of God. So in the Old Testament, deliverance from yoke, which was understood as forced submission or discipline, is a constant element in the prophecies of salvation. So if you read the Old Testament and the prophecies of salvation, you constantly see this yoke there. Is a subjection can also be exercised by addiction, whereas the yoke of wisdom is for man or woman a benefit. For instance, this sentence, to carry the yoke of God, means to submit to its precepts, a commandment. So all sinners try to break this yoke. So in the New Testament, the yoke was taken only in the figurative sense, either with regard to the imperatives of Roman power, or even the Old Testament law, or vices. So then comes Jesus, and Jesus' yoke is light, because only he is able to offer lenitive, soothing, to our pains and suffering. And you see, not only pain and suffering, we can understand the yoke of Christ. We will see later. All right. The easy yoke. So we're going to read this passage again. 28, the verse 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you a rest. 29, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, when Jesus, to understand a little bit more about the yoke of Christ, we need also to understand that Jesus mission. A little bit we're going to talk about. So when he incarnated, he left us many evangelical maxims, which they were recorded and published by the apostles about like 70 years, 7 years after his physical death. So he brought us the good news. That's all the way to regard the gospel that brought by Jesus. So his mission was to bring us the good news, a new spiritual landmark for humanity, a solid building in which the window of darkness would not be able to demolish it. Now, he taught us through parables. He taught us to parables, for we were not yet ready to absorb all his doctrinal content. That's why he taught us through parables. We are not ready to know everything at that time. So at that time, he said that he could not teach us of everything, but in due course, he would send us the promised consoler and the Spirit of truth, who would remind us of what he said and reveal to us new knowledge. That's the promised consoler. With this expression, we're going to be talk a little more in depth later. So therefore, it is fitting to our spiritual improvement to seek not only its theoretical sense, not only know in theory his teachings, but also its practical application in our experience. So let us therefore enter at the heart of these precepts, and not as a wise man or woman, but as a child. We have to put ourselves before these teachings. We have to put ourselves as a child. What is a child? Without defenses and free of any prejudice. Otherwise, you're not going to understand the message. Now, yoke of Christ means the help given by the Lord to lead us to the path of true freedom and happiness. If it does not refer to any imposition or subjugation, as it has been erroneously interpreted in the past, diametrically opposed to the meaning of these teachings of Jesus. So the yoke of Christ is not imposed. There is no obligation. So if you go to the gospel according to Spiritism, you have the cover book over there, entitled, the chapter entitled, which is the 6th chapter, is entitled The Consoling Christ. Allan Kardec discusses the importance of accepting the yoke of Christ and the need to make every effort to understand and practice his immortal message. It also clarifies that this understanding can be accomplished through Spiritist teachings, since Spiritism is the promised consoler, because Jesus is the lever that God uses to make humanity advanced. So Allan Kardec, in the book The Heaven and Hell as well, there, if you read this book, it deals exhaustively with the problem of death. And it tells us that the fear of death stems from the insufficient notion of future life, although it also denotes the need to live and fear of total destruction. We have to fear. We fear that we're not going to, we fear for our lives, that instinct that we have that protect us. But according to his point of view, the Spiritists, we Spiritists, we don't fear death. because life is no longer a hypothesis, but a reality. In other words, we remain individualized and subject to progress, even in the absence of the physical body. So we know that after death, we continue as spirits. So the true meaning of expressions, the expression yoke of Christ, let's ask ourselves these questions. Is Jesus talking about going towards him to receive cure for our illnesses? Or to free ourselves from the obsessions, much like he did with the demons that tortured and persecuted men and women at that time? That's the meaning? Definitely not. How to understand this gentle yoke during our disappointments and hardships, you may ask. So, all sufferings, such as miseries, deceptions, physical pain, and loss of loved ones, will find consolation from faith in the future and from confidence in God's justice. What is the future? Is the future life, the real life? This is temporary. The life we have now is temporary. We know that's continuing. So all of which Christ came to teach men. On the other hand, for those who expecting nothing after this life, or who simply doubt afflictions will seem heavier to them, as they do not have any hope of mitigating their bitterness. So if you don't believe anything else after this life, it's going to be harder. But if you believe, and you know, not only believe, that we know that we continue, and we also, and if we continue, and our spirit always is going to exist because we are immortal, that put life in another perspective. So that's why prompted Jesus to say, "Come unto me, all who are fatigued or weary, and I will give you rest or comfort," depending on the translation. So meanwhile, the assistance and happiness promised to the afflicted depends on one condition. And what is the condition is to be found in the law that Jesus taught us. So why do some people patiently accept the setbacks of life and others do not? And it has to do with the understanding of the purpose of life. So his yoke, the yoke of Christ, is the observance of this law. But the yoke is light and the law gentle because it only imposes love and charity at its obligations. That's all you have to do, love and charity. And you can find this in item 2 and the chapter 6 in the Gospel according to the Spiritism. We see then that it is always an individual decision to transform for the better, right? We need to decide ourselves. I'm going to transform for the better. Actually, the lecture yesterday was about transformation. So each person with the resources at his disposal, because we are in different levels, right? And where and how he lives is able to renew himself spiritually. So it depends how we live this life is going to renew our spirit in our future life. So freeing ourselves from the vicious of cycle of what? Error and success, determined by the law of cause and effect. So it's necessary to work at and will engage in the evolutionary effort itself. That's we need to engage. So if you have more knowledge about your essence as a spirit and what happened to you, the things you do now, and how it's going to affect you after you leave this physical body, that's how we're going to face our adversities. That's how well, I should put it like that way, we're going to face our adversities. So all depends on that. So we have Spiritism, and you have this expression, the consoling Jesus. Allan Kardec, he clarifies that his understanding can be realized through Spiritist teachings, since Spiritism is the promised consoler. Since Jesus is the lever that God uses to make humanity advance. But in order to fully understand Jesus' message, we must learn how to decode it. And we need a key. What is this key? The key is the Spiritist Doctrine. So Jesus, the master, Kardec, the professor, and Jesus, the door. So Kardec, the key. So as Manuel states, Spiritism accomplishes what Jesus said of the promised consoler, knowledge of things, making us know where we come from, where we are going to, and why we are on earth, a call to the true principles of God's law, and consolation by faith and hope. So that's, if you take the body of the Spiritism, is going to answer those fundamental questions: where we come from, where are we going to, and why we're here in this earth, in this moment, in this pandemic. It's all answered by Spiritism. So Spiritism has come at the predicted time to fulfill Christ's promise. Presided over by the Spirit of truth, it calls men and women to observe the law and reveals all manner of things, so make understandable what Jesus has said only in parable form. So we have all this knowledge at our disposal now to understand all these teachings. So Spiritism has come to open men's eyes and ears because it speaks through without figuration or allegory. So lifting up the veil which had been intentionally cast upon certain mysteries. Remember, Christ himself said he didn't tell everything at a time because we wouldn't understand. So finally, then, it has come to bring supreme consolation to disinherited of this earth and to all who suffer by showing them the just cause of their suffering and the useful purpose of all pain. Everything's fine? We have this knowledge that is revolutionary. It's brought by Spiritism, life after death. The great ancient Greek philosophers, they said life is nothing more than a preparation for death. What awaits us beyond the grave? Is there a heaven, a hell? Our souls go back to the universe? What do you think? If you study Spiritism, we know that, I apologize, we have faith in the future. Allan Kardec tells us that the fear of death stems from the insufficient notion of the future life. Because we Spiritists, we don't fear death. Because life is not a hypothesis Life is reality. So after death, after we die, we remain as individuality and subject to progress, even in the absence of the physical body. So we don't have this physical body. We come back to this as a spirit, which is our essence, and you continue in the spiritual realm, we continue to progress. So that puts our life, actually, our existence, I should say, in another perspective. You see, we are spirits, and we are immortals, and we are immortal spirits. That means we have a beginning, but we don't have an end. We're going to progress and progress and progress until we reach our perfection. And that's changed, right? Everything. But that you might ask how we live as immortal spirits. It's a challenge, isn't it? It's the greatest challenge. We face, like, if you have this knowledge that you are immortal and you are a spirit, what changed for you? The way you look the world, the way you look people around you? We face circumstances and people with another look. For instance, we going through this life, and it's been like, for some of us, it's been very hard, but we know that's temporary. And we know that it's necessary to go through. We have also the ability to look to ourselves in a different way. So, wait a minute, I'm here trying. That's another chance that I'm having. It is important one, so I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to make a mistake, yes, because we are humans, but I know that I can fix it, right? If it is not in this life, I will fix in the next life. So, next existence, the courage to change what needs to be changed. Because we came to a realization as immortal spirits that we have to work on our tendencies and flaws. We have to work hard and try to change them. And change them, we change our destiny. So after we die, we're going to be face to face with what? Our consciousness. That's all we're going to have. And in this process of doing this, we start to know ourselves. So self-knowledge is very important. So it's always the individual decision to transform for the better. Each person with the resources that one has, where and how one lives, can renew himself spiritually. We already said that, freeing himself from the vicious cycle of error and correctness, determined by the law of cause and effect. So it's necessary to work at will and to engage in the evolutionary effort oneself. That's we have to focus on it. We talk about the laws. We have natural laws. And we may find a confusion sometimes, like this pandemic situation we are living right now. It seems chaotic, right? The whole world. But if you look at the laws, they are in harmony. Nothing has changed. So we have those natural laws. We're going to quickly to know about them. It refers to both physical law and moral law, but we are interested in the moral law. Among such laws, moral laws are essential to our spiritual progress. Again, Moral laws are essential to our spiritual progress. So we need to get to know those laws. And we need to make an effort to live by those laws. It is easy. No. It is impossible. No. It is possible to do it. It's not easy, but possible. They reveal to us the notions of good and evil and how we should conduct ourselves in life in order to attain the beatitudes. If you go to the third part of the Spirit's book, and you find the moral laws there. I'm going to just tell you what the laws are. The law of worship, law of work, law of reproduction, law of preservation, law of destruction, social law, law of progress, law of equality, law of liberty, and the most important one, law of justice, love, and compassion. So we have all this information available to us. All you have to do is start to pay attention on them. Read it. Meditate about it. Practice love. On the other hand, it's always good to keep in mind that spiritual growth does not only happen through the trails of pain, but also through the exercise of love, as the Apostle Peter teaches in his first epistle. Above all, cultivate with all multiplicity of sins, mutual love, because love covers the multitude of sins. Let's just say we did something very wrong. Do something very good instead. Focus on you have to do from now on. We got it wrong one time, fine. Now we know. Now we know better. We didn't know better when we did something wrong, but now that we know, we just practice love and, do as good as we can. As a conclusion of our study, we will say, without Jesus, we would be confined in the shadow of ourselves, and without the discipline of his gospel of light and love, with all the pomp of our convincing and brilliant phenomenology, we would be nothing more than lost and restless consciences on the way to chaos. This is a beautiful message from Emmanuel. So, what is the yoke of Christ? Is when we observe those laws. So, this yoke is easy and the law is gentle, since it only imposes as a duty love and charity. That's all we have to do it. Love and charity. I'm going to just read some comments here. Christina said, we are spirits having a human experience. Exactly, Christina. Alexandra said, since I realized that I came into this lifetime to be a better person, I have learned how to forgive others and understand those who are not ready to love and forgive not even themselves. I start praying for them. Love is the key. Exactly. And I don't know if you guys were able to watch the video. It's very nice because he was very upset. He was having a really bad day, and it all related to people's behavior. And once he puts the glasses, he starts to see the world in a way different. Yes, Elizabeth saying, oh my God, what a lesson of life is this movie. And it's like when knowledge, we have the knowledge will do that for you. It's like you put in a glasses, and it's a magical glasses, because you start to see everything in a different way. You're gonna be more compassionate with people, more understanding. You're gonna complain less, right? So that's the thing. That's what the gospel and the teachings and the Spiritism teachings also bring us this knowledge of all these things. Just to let you know, our resources for this study today is based on one of the books by the Federation, Brazilian Federation, Spiritist Federation, which is the one of the stud books that we have. Also, there is this book by the Spiritual Emmanuel. We have the Gospel According to Spiritism, and something from the blog by Sergio Biagi Gregorio, a very good article he wrote about this topic.